What's going on, everybody? You got Nick B in the studio. So if you hear anything in the background, that's my kids in the office. But, you know, I made a post on something on Twitter, and I was thinking about doing a podcast about this because it's just something that's kind of irked me. Um, I made a post, or I made a reply, a comment to somebody talking about how they witnessed the execution of an Alabama inmate. Right now, the lethal injection that pretty much most states that still have a death penalty go by, the people that created the drugs that were being used either threatened to sue if they continued to use them, or they pulled it from the shelves. They pulled it from the market. I don't really remember. All I remember is there was a problem with what they use for lethal injection to give these murderers a humane death. That in itself, to me, is just sounds so asinine. I know. There are a lot of bleeding heart people out there that, oh, that's a life too. I don't see it that way. And the reason I don't see it that way is because I believe wholeheartedly, this is not a religious standpoint, I believe wholeheartedly that when you take somebody's life, you forfeit your own life. You're not civil. You can no longer be trusted amongst society. You took a life, and hopefully justice will find its way and put you to death. I don't believe you should be able to live out the rest of your days in a cushioned jail cell, because if we're being honest, prison is not a sentence anymore. It's more like a vacation. They still have all the amenities that they would if they were free, only now they have no stress over making money, paying their mortgage, paying the rent, paying the utilities. If they're going to get that job, or if they're going to be able to get on the internet, they don't have none of that stress because we give it all to them. And I think there's something fundamentally wrong with doing that for murderers. And there's, again, this is my belief. It's not backed by a religious point, because again, arguing a religious point in today's world is almost sometimes moot. But I do believe God is very clear. The Bible is very clear on this. And for the longest time, this was understood. Now all of a sudden, you've got all these celebrities getting into it. And again, I want to caveat real quick. The justice system in America is not perfect. I have been on both sides of it. I have been a victim and I have been a perpetrator. I understand probably better than most how the system is. Now, not to the level, not to murder. I haven't done anything like that. But at the same time, I've witnessed the justice system be incredibly great. And even the police force, which is something that I ultimately stand against too, which is for another day. But they did a wonderful job. And I say all that because something that I don't talk about, and it's because I don't want people thinking that because this life-changing event happened to me, that I bring it up to justify anything, because that will slander the person I care about. And what I mean by all that is my sister was murdered when I believe I was 10 or 11, 10 to 13. I was somewhere around there, because some of the dates are foggy. I believe I was almost 13, if I'm not mistaken. And I sat through the court. I heard everything. I heard how these people talked. Forget the fact that she was my sister. I heard the fact of how these people talked and bragged about killing her. And that stuck with me. Because again, everybody, all these bleeding hearts that come out and start screaming about the murderer, they're like, well, that wasn't your sister that was, no, but it was somebody's. You know what I mean? Like, it was somebody's sister. That was somebody's child. That was somebody's brother or sister or relative. And they're going to feel the same way I felt when I was a kid, having to hear these people talk about my sister like she was dog shit. And again, I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not talking about that for sympathy. I'm a firm believer in, if you haven't experienced it or if you haven't gone through it, you shouldn't speak on it. So I only bring her up, and I only bring that case up for that fact. There are people actually on Twitter crying because an inmate was put to death in Alabama and he struggled to breathe. And I simply said, I hope he had a hellish hell of the last few minutes of his life. And I don't care that people want to call me names, that's fine. But the fact that there are so many people coming out to attack me simply because I don't cry for a murderer having a horrible death. In fact, in my mind, he still got off too easy. And they're like, oh, this is psychopathic. You're a psychopath. You have no empathy. You have no, you're not a human. You have no human concept. And I'm like, all of that is directed where it needs to be. I'm empathetic for the families. I feel their pain. I don't care about the murderer. Heartless, maybe, but psychotic, no. Because again, these people are advocating and defending a person who would take their life because they're a murderer. They don't value life. They don't give a shit about somebody's life. They've already proven that. So why should I give a shit about theirs? Or why should I care when their death is not a comfortable death? Was their victims a comfortable? Did they lay their victim down and inject them with something that would just put them to sleep and let their heart stop or their lungs quit breathing? They get so tired that they just would stop breathing. Did they do that for their victims? I highly fucking doubt it. So why in God's name should I cry or have any kind of response when a murderer who doesn't value life loses his life in a less than perfect manner? The answer is I don't. And there's a lot of people that feel the same way I do. If you're against the death penalty, if you're one of these people that call it a state-sponsored cruelty, I feel for you if it ever happens to your family. And the worst part is, some of these people, and again, I know the justice system isn't perfect, but the worst part is some of these families that are like, I wish somebody else would have killed them instead of this person. And I'm like, what? Or they're like, I don't want them to face death. But that's the law. The civility of our nation is based on the laws and the enforcement of the laws and the protection of those laws. Right now, the majority of countries out there, period, say that if you kill somebody, you forfeit your life. Just so happens in our country, if you forfeit the life, the states can decide if you are put to death or not. By a jury of your peers, usually. You do have the right to forego a jury trial. But typically, you're put to death by a jury of people that are around your age, from your town, from your background. It's a hodgepodge of people that are essentially listening to the evidence of the case against you. And again, I know It's not a perfect system. Sometimes we get it wrong. Do those times suck? Absolutely. If somebody is innocent and they are put to death, or worse, they are guilty and they're let go, that's a horrible, horrible thing. But ultimately, I respect the justice system's decision. And the jury, if the jury is the one that's like, hey, we think they should spend the rest of their life in prison, I don't agree with it, but that's the system, right? I don't think judges should be the ones up there making the decisions. I think it should be a jury, but the jury can recommend, and then the judge implements the sentence. That's what I see. I don't like a judge just decreeing after the jury says they find him guilty. I don't like a judge going, okay, you're going to die. Let the jury decide that. Because if the jury doesn't feel that this person should be put to death for what they did, then I think the courts should listen to it, take it into account. The judge can override it, obviously, but the prosecution and the defense can argue if they want it to. Like the prosecution is the one that sets up if death is even on the table. So, you know what I mean? Like, all these people, though, that are crying because a murderer didn't fall asleep in the most nicest of ways. And I'm like, who gives a shit if he didn't have a death that was him just falling asleep? Because again, his victim didn't get that chance. And that's who I care about. I don't give a rat's ass about the murderer, because I no longer see that murderer as being human. Once you take somebody's life for no reason other than like monetary gain, and again, this isn't advocating for taking anybody's life, but I'm saying if you take somebody's life for any reason other than what the law allows, self-defense, working in the military, whatever, right? Then your life isn't shit anymore. And I don't care what happens to you. That doesn't make me anything other than, okay, where I saw you as a person before you did this, civil, humane, all of that good stuff, the moment you took somebody's life, all that goes away. If y'all want to call me psychotic for that, I guess that's the new definition for it. Just like how a bunch of you people took literally and made it mean something that it completely different than what it used to when I was a kid. Okay, I guess that's the new definition of psychopath. I have no compassion for a murderer. If that makes me psychotic, then so be it. I'll wear it as a badge of honor. Because again, I don't care about their life. I care about the victim's family, and their life. It is what it is, people. Hug your loved ones each and every day, because you never know when the good Lord will call them home. For every dark night, there's always a brighter day. Life's just a party, and parties weren't meant to last. Just getting it off my chest. Y'all be good. Peace.